Hi, guys, and welcome to episode 2 of Our Stars and Stripes and Maple Syrup. This week we have Kev Campbell. Kev is a writer for the Roker Report. Kev, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so last week we had Sean. Sean miserably predicted that we would win 1-0. As we all know now, that did not happen. So, look, let's take a look at yesterday's match against someone we should have been beating quite handsomely in Doncaster. And where did it all go wrong?
Yeah, I think there's a domino effect of things that we could talk about, and probably more than we've got time for. I think a big piece is you can tell the team is in this transition, and I think we saw a lot yesterday. The back end of that transition, kind of that season that we've been in, coming to an end under Johnson and kind of the philosophy. And obviously, Speakman spoke about at the end of the transfer window on the team pod that there's a bigger philosophy that the team is trying to work towards, but I don't think at the minute we're seeing that come through. And I think he alluded to that's why Johnson ended up losing his job. And I think we saw the lingering side effects of that in yesterday's match, unfortunately. So
let's talk about those lingering after effects. After getting spanked by Bolton 6-0, we started with 10 of the starting 11 from the week before. Is it the starting 11 that needs to change? I mean, where are we going?
I don't know necessarily that you can chalk it all up to the starting 11 needing to change. Now I'll say I wouldn't have picked the team that was put out if I was in charge, but I'm not. But I don't think that we can say necessarily it's just the starting 11 and that's what led to the result. I think you could see the confidence after the first 15 minutes, and we had a little bit of possession, a little bit of brightness, but it didn't turn into anything. You could see how much the team is struggling for confidence at the minute. And I think getting a manager in, possibly in the form of a club legend and a massive personality, the confidence could shift on a dime. But at the moment, you could just tell they're gassed, they're bereft of confidence, and it showed the rest of the performance.
Okay, so look, we'll address the club legend a little bit later. But for me, I think it was the starting lineup. There's no leadership in that lineup.
Yeah.
I mean, Bath was supposed to come in as a natural leader, and we've leaked 8 goals in 2 games since his debut.
Yep.
You've got Evans in the middle, who is lightweight, injury prone, and we said this last week. I just don't see what he brings to the team. And then you've got our 2 promising youngsters in Embleton and Neil, and they're both haggard. And for anybody who watched last week, haggard means tired.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think if you look at Neil, if you look at Embleton, I think both of them have been in need of a rest. Both of them have seen a drop off in their form. As a result, it's been a drop off in their production, and I think that's what's led to the drop off in performances that Sunderland have had.
Yeah,
I thought we looked a little bit sharper with Matete when he came on.
Absolutely.
He was able to shore things up. But where did we go? I mean, Bart looks like he's the new son of Varga. One good game to start things off, and then it's like awful. I mean,
and I hope not. I mean, he comes in with a massive pedigree, comes in with a lot of good stuff on his CV. And like you said a second ago, the leadership qualities are there. And I don't know if it's not just a weird atmosphere that he came into and style of play that honestly doesn't really suit him to the best of his abilities. If we're honest, he's not the playing out from the back center half that we have been using over the course of the season. I'd like to think that in the right system with the right pieces around him, he's going to be okay. To the point about Neil, you look at the amount of minutes that he's played over the course of this season. We're asking a lot of a kid who is coming from the U23 setup. He's not playing a lot of senior football, and he's coming straight into a squad, and he hadn't had a rest all season long, basically. I mean, he's been in every squad. He's played 90 minutes almost every game. He's got some tired legs, and I think Matete will help that. I think some of these guys coming back from injury, getting Winchester back in the midfield, so there's a little bit more natural rotation in there to be able to cover him, I think will be super helpful as well. And he's got the skill and the ability that we saw early on in the season. I think he just needs a breather. He needs a rest and get some fresh legs, and he'll come back in the way that we saw him early on.
So yeah, look, I think there's quality in the team. I definitely don't think it's a struggling to make the playoffs kind of a team. But I think the fact that, and we touched on this last week, the fact that we tried to be honest in our approach as a club, play the games where we could put a team out, has probably come back to bite us on the arse a little bit. I mean, Wigan were again playing another FA Cup tie yesterday, so it gives them another game in hand on us. So it's going to be difficult, I think, for the rest of the season. Speaking of the playing out of the back, that pitch just isn't suited for playing out from the back.
No, not at all.
And I think Bath showed yesterday that he's not comfortable with it, because whenever that ball got punted up, it was just punted aimlessly from Bath, missed out the middle completely.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the pitch is a whole nother topic that we could spend a whole nother one of these talking about right now, and why it's in the situation that it's in. I haven't really heard a good explanation for that. I'm not a huge proponent of playing out from the back as a philosophy, but if it's working, like it was a little bit earlier in the season, or like we've seen it in some of our away games where the pitch was in a little bit better shape for us to do it, obviously we've got the ability and we've got the players to be able to do it. The worry is moving forward with the players that we've got, is that the best philosophy for us to play in? I don't know, maybe it is, but we definitely haven't seen that the last two games for sure.
So let's move into the game, because obviously it was another shit show. It wasn't a shellacking like we got against Bolton, but like you alluded to at the beginning, 15 minutes in, we were passing the ball nicely, and then the zip seemed to go out the pass. Like the ball started to be behind the runner again, which is what we had, the problem we had at Bolton, I felt. And I'm just not seeing those confident balls that we saw during that run we had in December when we were doing well, or early in the season, where the balls played in front of your forward moving player. Right. And I think it's holding up on the pitch a lot. And I just don't think the players are hitting the ball any quicker than they have been, thinking it's going to make the move. If you look at Clark when he came on, the zip that those passes were having from him was completely at a different speed from the rest of the team.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know what it is, because we've seen this now 3 or 4 times in the season where we come out, we play 15 to 20 minutes where everything seems to be kind of us working into the game. We're getting some passes together, but not really creating a lot of chances, almost like we're trying to build into the game as it grows. And then all of a sudden, it's like the air just goes out of the team and we look awful. The first touches are something over the last 2 games that are blowing my mind, how bad they are for professional footballers. Dan Neal a couple of times, I don't want to slag him off because of the season he's had, obviously, and the talent's there. But the first touches that he had yesterday, I mean, they were embarrassing. There was one in particular in the second half where he got the ball, he turned, and there was 20, 30 yards of space in front of him. And that first dribble he took was like 15 yards away, and it's easily turned over. It gets us into a mess. We make a foul, and the break is gone. Where, as in maybe earlier in the season, or when Matete came on, when he gets that little bit of space, he's composed, he moves forward. And like I said, Neal earlier in the season, composed, looks forward, gets his head up, plays the right ball. But for whatever reason, I think it does come down to a lot of confidence, and I don't know why or where it comes back. But the first touches all across the pitch yesterday were just mind-numbing.
No, I agree with you. I'm trying to work out what they're doing in training. I mean, look, I know that the academy has large open fields. They don't have an enclosed stadium that cuts off sunlight, if that's the excuse we're using this year. So the quality of the pitch in training is obviously a lot better than the match day pitch. But yeah, first touches have been poor, vision has been poor, moving off the ball yesterday was awful.
Yeah.
And then this building up from the back it just seems clueless. You've got, did we start with a 3? I think, I mean, yeah, technically it was a 3 with wing backs. And Winchester didn't look comfortable as in a back 3. Bath didn't look as though he wanted to be there playing the ball back, which meant you're left with Doyle. And Doyle thought he was Brazilian and doing runs beyond the players and then leaving us short at the back. So I think we need to become a little bit more direct.
Yeah.
I think we need to look at where the good parts of the pitch are, and they seem to be out on the touchlines. And we need to try and maximize that moving forward. We definitely are too stagnant when we've got the ball and teams just build up in front of you. And it's just a case of blocking them down. Now, everyone's favorite returning Messiah was talking about how breaking teams down who park the bus isn't impossible, and if you're drilled right, you should be able to do it. And at this
Absolutely.
level, with this quality of team we've got, I think we should be definitely breaking teams down. Like, no disrespect to Doncaster, but they fielded our reject yesterday.
Yeah.
I mean, Ollie Younger couldn't make it at the club, although yesterday I wish we'd had him.
Yeah.
Because
He looked great. I mean, that's the worst part about having him go out. He showed that he wasn't quite ready to break into our first team, but he goes to Doncaster, and yesterday he looks like a decent first team League One footballer. So that's not a good look for the club for sure.
So look, we got rid of Younger. Younger left in the transfer window. We got rid of Flanagan, also left in the transfer window, and then we didn't bring anybody in.
Right.
Now, Sean, yesterday when we said last week, when we were talking about what we needed as a club, said that he went through pretty much everything, but he was talking about Defoe coming back, although he was on the fence about that. He's talking about getting that central midfield player in. We brought Mateta in, but right. I think we missed a trick in not bringing in another defender, even if for cover.
Yeah, and like I said in the club podcast, Speakman talked a little bit about there were several offers to bring somebody in, and there were several permanent and loan deals, and they're looking at the free agent market, but that's a big miss, especially with that many outgoing in that position. You've got to have, and I'm sure they do, they've got several more on the list of possible incomings, even in the free agent market, but we got to have cover. Some of the issues that we've had at different positions over the course of the season are due to the fact that we didn't have sufficient cover to be able to adapt when those do happen. So yeah, we're super thin at center back, and I know a lot of people have been talking about RB coming in possibly, but he looks a long way off still for me for first team football. I mean, he's played with U23s a couple of times, but you're asking somebody to come from a massive injury back into the squad and into a pretty tough situation, and something I think people forget, a system that he hasn't really played in senior football. I mean, he kind of came in a transition time for the club, and he hasn't had a lot of time to play first team center back. So I don't know that that's sufficient cover. I think we do at some point need to bring in a free agent at center back to cover.
But to speak to that, and obviously it's speaking to how the club is set up. I thought the whole plan of the club was to play the same style of football from youth, and I'm talking like U7s and up right through to the main squad. So if he's been playing U23 football, he should be used to the system, surely.
Yeah, the system, I don't know that he would have a hard time adjusting to, but when you take a system at a U23 level and then move it into a first team League One level, there's a gap there between what he's been playing U23s and what he would be expected to do at the senior level, not necessarily in a system format, but how airtight the system is working. Obviously, they're the kids that are in U23s are still in the U23 level for a reason, whether that be they haven't matured or their skills need to develop still. So while the overall philosophy and system may be the same as you go down the tiers within the club, there's going to be a gap between each step up as you work your way towards the senior team.
I mean, he's been with us a year and a half now, second season. They come to the end of his second season. I'd really like to see him step up. I mean, I know he got injured before he got to play his first game for us. And obviously we got Jordan Willis sitting on the sidelines, not playing.
Yeah.
So we got decent cover if they were fit. I am annoyed that we let Younger and Flanagan go without replacing them first.
Right.
I remember growing up as a kid, my dad always drilled into me, don't leave a job unless you've got something else to go to.
Right.
And it's like, don't sell your or don't give away your assets until you got something to replace. So
yeah, that's right.
So let's talk about the one returning Messiah, and that's Jermaine Defoe. Obviously, crowd swelled to 38,500 yesterday.
Yeah, wild.
Which was it embarrasses some of the clubs up in the upper leagues. You look at Chelsea's average attendance for the season. I think someone said on Twitter is 37 and change for the season.
Yeah. And
then you got a third tier team with bigger attendance than that. It goes to show how passionate Sunderland fans are.
Yeah, for sure. And I think something that I put in the piece that I wrote for Roker this week is Sunderland really are a sleeping giant in League One. I mean, you look at the fan base, you look at the facilities, you look at the potential that the club have. It's a massive club, and it wasn't due to results or atmosphere around the team at the time, but Jermaine Defoe coming back gives that little bit of boost to the fan base, a little bit of unity that we haven't necessarily had so far this season amongst the fans on all topics. He comes back in, and we're pushing Premier League attendance levels. And so, bang on to the fans who were able to make it out there. If it wasn't an ocean away, I would have been there myself, sat next to somebody, having a drink and enjoying a bit of bad football, unfortunately.
So let's talk about that, because your accent clearly isn't from the Northeast.
Sure.
You're in an area that doesn't have a lot of Sunderland fans in the area. Like,
Right.
I spent the last 20 years in New Jersey. And so we had our get-togethers and legends in New York and Nevada Smith before that. So we were able to pull in Americans, fans from, like, just guys from work that we drag out for drinks. How
Right.
did you become, of all things, a Sunderland fan in North Carolina?
Yeah. So I went to college at Western Carolina University, which is way up in the mountains, western end of the state, and got fascinated growing up with the English footballing system. I got kind of disillusioned to the MLS setup and the way that it all functions, like all other kind of American sports do. It seemed like the competition wasn't there, the level of play wasn't there. And I remember when I was really young, asking my dad, like, why is there such a difference between what we're seeing the men's national team do and stuff like World Cup qualifying and World Cups and international competitions, and what we're watching when we watch an MLS game? Because it seemed almost like it was a different game. Some of the quirky things MLS was trying to do to get the American average fan in, like
the penalty shootouts at the end of it,
Yeah.
if it was a draw.
Yeah, penalty shootouts, and they had the run-up penalty shootouts for a while that they tried. You would start at midfield and dribble the ball like a hockey-style shootout with the goalie. It's like,
Yeah, I remember those.
this isn't even the same sport. Like, what are we doing? And so,
So
America.
I'm just going to jump in.
Yeah, go ahead.
The greatest thing I ever saw an American soccer club do, and I say soccer because I'm over here in the US,
Yeah.
was incentivize fans to cheer for a goal in the second half. I think it was a Charleston Battery game, so it was minor leagues effectively. And I think the thing was, the promotion was, if you bought a hot dog at the beginning of the game, and I'm a chunky guy, so obviously hot dogs were purchased. If they scored between 45 and 55th minute, then you could go back and get a free hot dog.
Yep.
And I was so the crowd got up for that second half 10 minutes. And then all of us fat guys went off and got our hot dogs.
Yeah, that's it. So it's like all these weird, quirky, things that take away from the actual competition, actually getting to know the game, getting to know the systems. There was no talk of like, look at the tactics and see how beautiful the game is. It was like, come and look at all these cheesy things that we're doing to get you in the stadium. And so I remember the US started putting on TV playbacks of Premier League games in prime time for us. So like in the evenings on Saturdays, they would run a playback from that morning's Premier League games once a week. And so when those things started coming on, I was glued to the screen, because I was like, this is the game that I want to watch. This is what I want to see. So I didn't really have a team, just kind of following the European soccer setup and just kind of dipping into the curiosity of it all. And then I was watching a game in the dining hall, actually, of my college, and it was the game of the week or whatever, and it was Chelsea versus Sunderland, and the commentators were going on and on and on about, oh, mighty Chelsea, they're unbeatable, they're having such a great season, and here come lowly Sunderland, they're going to do their best, but they're really outmatched, they're outweighted in this fight. And that was the game where we beat them 3-1, and we had a almost Maradona type run in the box goal. Yeah, and so it was like, all right, this is a team. The fans were going nuts, and the team was counted out, and they kind of this underdog story. And my fascination was just triggered, and so I went and I just started researching everything Sunderland and fell in love with the club.
I'm sorry for that. Yeah, we've had false dawns, and look, that was a great game.
Yeah, it was.
I think that was one of our escapes from relegation runs.
Yep.
So that was around about 2013.
Yeah, 2012, 2013, somewhere in there.
That's nearly 10 years as a Sunderland supporter.
Yeah, that's it. and it's been quite a ride. Now, instead of pointing to Premier League game of the week to explain people the team I follow, I have a lot more explaining to do to get them up to speed. But man, it's something that obviously my love for it has grown, passion for it's grown, and it's been a blast.
So how does an American explain relegation to other Americans that don't know the concept?
Yeah, it's one of them where you start trying to explain it and then you realize I probably need to take this person out for lunch or out to dinner to have a little bit more time to explain this, because the concept's so foreign in American sports. We literally have teams in the bottom half of basketball or American football divisions who are losing on purpose so that they can get higher draft picks in the next year. And it's like you can't break the American concept of that unless you get enough time to really explain it. My father-in-law, actually, I've been able to kind of get him up to speed, and he's there now. So that's one more that understands the concept, and he'll sit down and watch a Sunderland game with me, unfortunately, now.
Yeah, the draft system over here completely messes with my head. You get rewarded for being absolute pish.
Yeah.
I normally say, okay, imagine the Yankees having 2 really bad seasons, and they're no longer allowed to play in the MLB. They go to AAA, and then they're so bad they've got to go to AA.
Yeah,
and that's pretty much where Sunderland are right now.
Yeah, that's it. That's just it. And I think the system, I was actually talking to somebody several weeks ago about the MLS system and why it hadn't caught on here as well as, maybe the leadership of MLS likes. And I think it really would go a long way to put in a relegation promotion type system. It would incentivize the teams. It would incentivize, not like these players we've seen in the last decade or so in MLS, where it's kind of the back end of their career. They're coming for one last paycheck and a farewell tour, but really developing talent, getting some high quality players in, and they're playing for something. They're fighting for something, and I think that would go a long way to MLS as a whole.
No, because if you look at the men's national team on an individual basis, none of their stars are playing in the MLS.
Right.
Your Pulisic, your Reina, those kind of guys, they're all playing in Germany in the Premier League. So I definitely think if there was a need for a more steely resolve at the end of the season, because things are going tits up.
Yeah.
But you have the problem where you've got franchises who pay millions of dollars to be a franchise. Now don't want to lose that franchise fee or that return by not being in the top echelon of the franchise. So
that's why we see it. Yeah, we've saw the whole mess this summer with the Super League. Some people in Europe realize the monetary allure of an MLS type system where you've got nothing to lose and everything to gain, and hopefully fans here, as they become more aware of the world game, begin to pick up on some of those things in MLS, and we see a real change. That's my hope anyway.
No, I would definitely like to see relegation enter into football over here. I definitely think that it's missing in the game at times where you've got nothing to play for. You can see teams have got nothing to play for. But while I have you, obviously you're only my second guest into the podcast process, but you're the first American.
Sure.
So we have to talk about the only American at the club.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on Lyndon Gooch?
I've been at least for the stuff that I've done for Roker, I'm like the lone Gooch kind of happy clapper rah supporter. I'm a big fan of the idea of Lyndon Gooch, and I'll have to explain a little bit, but the potential that he has. He obviously came up while we were in the Premier League through our academy system, so he's a Premier League academy graduate, and that's kind of the standard that I hold him to because of where the club were at the level that he came through the academy system. And he's got, in flashes, he's got that Premier League talent. It's there, you can see it at times, but it's so inconsistent that it can become really frustrating to watch him and be on the happy clapper side of his support group, because it's like, I know the potential is there, but how do you continue to, try to convince yourself and others after 6 poor performances in a row that the potential is still there? And I think honestly, Saturday was a prime example of that. We saw him at times give that flash of pace, that flash of flair, whip across into the box, but then we also see the times where the ball just gets stuck to his foot he puts his head down, he starts driving at somebody and runs out of room and either kicks the ball out for a goal kick or turns it over because he's so bent on just putting his head down and trying to beat his man rather than playing maybe a 1-2 or get into a triangle on the side and get down the byline. And it just I think he's almost a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde for the America's Sunderland support group here.
So I'll pin my colors to the mast. I'm definitely a fan of Lyndon Gooch. Lyndon, if you ever want to come on the podcast, you're welcome. But no, for me, yesterday would definitely said or showed everything you want to see about Lyndon Gooch.
Yep.
Nobody chases back when he's lost the ball quite like he does. He's tenacious on getting the ball back, but nobody gives it up quite as much as he does either.
Yeah, that's it.
And again, he loves a dribble, but he loves to run into 2 or 3 players and doesn't look up and doesn't get rid of the ball soon enough. But for me, yesterday, his end product, his crosses were just awful.
Yeah.
Too many of them went in low and went in without pace, so they weren't beating the first man. And that's why I think if I was someone like Stuart, I'd be furious. Like, look, I'm here, I'm in position.
Right.
And now I'm having to come all the way back because you're not able to get the ball in. Yeah. And I think that's where players like Roberts, maybe Clark, Djaku, McGeady when he's back fit, I think that's where they'll take precedence or will get their place in the team ahead of Gooch. But I do like Gooch. I like his attitude. Yeah. I like the fact that he likes to give the verbals.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think speaking to what we were talking about earlier, that's a piece of the leadership that we've been missing for so much of the season. And I think, for all of the support and positives that came from the Lee Johnson era, that may have been one of his biggest downfalls for me is this leadership group that he put together rather than just a couple of key captains. And it almost made the voices of leadership within the team quieter because there were so many of them. So I can imagine as a player, like you got a leadership group in the team of like 5 or 6 or 7 players, and they're all trying to say something. What happens if they're all given different instructions at halftime? Who do we listen to? Because there's not just one club captain. It's this leadership group. And so I think Lyndon now, with a lot of those guys having gone out in the window, he may have a little louder voice in the dressing room that it may suit him. And maybe getting a couple of these guys back in the squad, maybe the rocket that he needs to kind of up his game and realize his spot's not guaranteed. He's going to have to work a little bit harder to keep his place.
Obviously, Gooch's contract is up at the end of the season, if I remember right. So he's playing for his future at Sunderland. So
yeah, 100%.
Fingers crossed we'll see more from Lyndon as the season progresses. So look, let's just jump back into the game. Sunderland were 2-0 down. And really didn't look as though we were creating anything. And then in a crazy period of a couple of minutes, we had Embleton hit the post. We had what I thought was a clear goal disallowed.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I mean, I've seen the pictures on Twitter where it's freeze framed and it's clearly behind the goal.
Right.
What were your thoughts? Did you?
Yeah, it was one of those where it's the first 15 minutes we looked good. We looked like a completely different team, a league below, to be honest, for the middle stretch of the game, both that stretch before and after the break. And then for whatever reason, like the last 10 minutes of the game, we looked like a team who actually could put a couple in the back of the net for some reason. And so it turned back on maybe in desperation. They could feel the tension amongst almost 40,000 beginning to kind of crawl up their backs a little bit. But yeah, it could have had a couple more, but at the end of the day, did we deserve to get anything out of that game? Probably not. Could we have gotten something out of that game? Oh, 100%. The chances were there. And like you said, you hit the post, you have one that was clearly over the line, and you get a tap in from Evans from really the best passage of play of the whole game, that 3 or 4 minutes leading up to the goal. Really looked dangerous there. So hopefully that's what whoever comes in as manager, hopefully quickly, can kind of take as the lone positive moving forward. Like, look at how we ended the game. We've got the quality there. Let's build on that and expect more from ourselves and go forward.
The question you have to raise then is if we were strong towards the end of the game, did we leave substitutions too late? We brought on, who was our first substitution to come on? Was that Clark on his own?
I think it was Clark.
So Clark came on and looked handy when he came on. And then there was a gap. And I'm sat in my house yelling at my TV. I've got my grandson with me, so I'm trying not to curse. That doesn't work.
Right.
If his first word begins with a C, I'm in a lot of trouble. But we then bring on Mateta, we bring on Defoe for his return, and we look lively.
Yeah.
Now, if we brought those guys on 10 minutes earlier, could we have got a draw out of the game? Probably. Did we deserve it? Definitely not.
Yeah.
But that's been an issue that I think we've had all season.
Yeah, 100%.
Is the guy on the sideline just hasn't had Johnson, obviously, to start with yesterday, with it being, what's it do? Dodds?
Proctor and Dodds, yeah.
Yeah. They just didn't seem to know the right time to make the change.
Yeah, and to me, the right time to make the change was at a halftime. I was scratching my head when the team came out unchanged out of the dressing room, because the way they ended the half, you could have, if you're allowed it, we could have subbed all 11 off, and I would have been happy. There wasn't a lot going on the pitch leading into halftime, so I was certain, watching the halftime kind of highlights and stuff, I was certain that Frankie was going to announce some halftime substitutions, at least one, maybe two, or all three if somebody's really got the guts to go out there and make them. But I was shocked at halftime when there were no changes to the team.
I'd have had no problems with 3 substitutions at halftime. What goes through my mind, and I think it goes through a lot of fans' mind, is what is Dodds and Proctor saying? What is Johnson saying during the game from their vantage point that we're not seeing from the stand? Obviously, we see a little different in the game.
Sure.
But it was plain to see that it wasn't working. It was plain to see that some of those players were gassed and needed to be off. And I just don't understand why you don't make that substitution earlier.
And if we've brought these players in the transfer window as well, why did we bring them in if they're going to sit the bench? We've obviously brought them into play, so let's get them out there and let's see if they can do a job and raise the level of the team. That's how I feel about it anyways. If you're bringing somebody in, especially in January, you're bringing them into play. This is not the time to bring in, your long-term development projects. This is not the time to bring in your for next season players. This is a time to bring in what you need now to go out and finish the season strong. So I know maybe some of them, like Defoe, obviously wasn't probably in a position where he could have come in and played 90 minutes, but could he played a little bit more than he did? Probably so. Matete has been playing in League One all year, so he surely was ready to go. So hopefully we see something different on Tuesday than we saw Saturday. That's for sure.
So let's talk about Tuesday's game coming. Do you think we'll have a manager in place for that game?
I don't see any way that we don't at this point. Obviously, the clock's ticking. It's a short amount of time to get all the workings done. But if the team has been doing their job since Johnson was sacked, or even before that, hopefully, then there should be a way to get somebody in. Obviously, they're not going to have a massive amount of time to, do stuff like training and do massive changes that we need. But just to have somebody else on the touchline, I think what we saw on Saturday was that the coaching staff obviously weren't brought to the club to be the head coaches. They did a great job filling in. Well, that could be argued, I guess, but they did the job that needed to be done. That's right. Yeah. And you can't expect too much more from them. They went from, being brought in to be assistants at U23s to being thrown onto the touchline for the first team. So I think we definitely need to have somebody in place on Tuesday. And I think, I don't want to speak too soon, but for Cheltenham, you gotta be able to get a result there.
We got to get 3 points, but look, I saw your piece earlier in the week, and why not Keno?
Yeah, my thing on him is does he have the ability to do the job for us? I don't know the answer to that. A lot of people think he does. For me, and this is something that I got in some pretty big arguments on Twitter about, but he hasn't been a senior head coach for over a decade. Yeah. And I get he's been working as an assistant. He's been working as an advisor to these teams. He's done a lot of work on the training ground with the teams that he's helped out, whether that be the international job or a couple of domestic jobs that he's had. but there's a world of difference between helping out on the training pitch, even if you're running most of the training yourself as an assistant coach. I get an assistant doesn't just run for coffee. I get they're doing a lot of work, but there's a world of difference between doing the work on the training pitch to choosing teams, choosing tactics, making game time decisions, making the substitutions, getting the team up when they need a lift from the touchline. There's a world of difference between those two jobs. And so my only reservation is that I think he's been away from it from a long time. It'd be a great feel-good piece. It may be the lift that we need emotionally and mentally in the dressing room to get through the season. But as a long-term installment past the end of the year, I don't know that he's the right man for the job. And for me, I don't think that he's the best candidate for the job, even for right now. And I know that's probably a minority opinion within the fan base right now.
So, no, I tend to agree with you. Similar for the reason I didn't think Defoe was the right signing as a striker.
Sure.
And he's played Defoe's played 9 minutes up until yesterday.
Yeah, he's played more minutes for us than he has the rest of the season.
So for me, it was and the same with King. Look, King's been in the studio, he's been watching football, but he hasn't been in football on the day-to-day grind. If you listen to the Aston Villa guys who were there when King was the assistant manager, they don't have good things to say.
Right.
He wasn't widely liked as in the Republic of Ireland job as Martin O'Neill's assistant,
right?
But they were effective as a duo.
Correct.
Ipswich fans don't really hold much of an opinion. So the only people who seem to want Keane back are Sunderland fans,
right?
And I don't know what it is about Sunderland fans. They want somebody back so bad, and it's to bring him home. Last week it was all the cries were for bring Jermaine Defoe home. Dude's had eight different clubs in his life, but Sunderland's home.
Right.
And like look, I'm all for looking forward. Let's look at who the best man for the job is. I probably agree with you, and I'm probably in the minority as well with you that Keane probably isn't that long-term appointment. But if you look at the odds behind me here, he's a clear favorite.
Right.
I mean, but then you look at like McCann, and it's an uninspiring idea for an appointment. Neil Warnock, I've said on Twitter and got some grief on Twitter for it, said I'd rather burn the grass stadium to the ground than have him manage at the club.
Yeah,
and then you look at, I mean, I didn't even know who Patrick Kisnorbo was.
Right.
I mean, that's how bad it is. The one that I do like from his work up in Celtic was Neil Lennon. But apparently he's the Antichrist as well. So for me, and again, this is a minority opinion. I've gotten gassed on Twitter for this, but I think the right man for the job, when I am asked straight up, for the rest of this season, and I want to caveat this and make it very, very clear, but for the next couple months to get us over the line, I think the right man is Grant McCann, because he's gotten promotion in a recent future. It's not going to set the world on fire. He's not going to make wholesale changes. He's not a wildly different personality necessarily, but he's got on his CV getting a team out of League One within a short amount of time. The last couple of years, he's done it last season. So for me, he's got a fire because he's been, let go from a club that he got into the championship. I can imagine he's got a little fire in his belly from that, a little chip on his shoulder, a point to prove. And I think that he might be the right man for the job to get us through this season. And then if we want to interview him for the job next season, we can. But I think let's just get through this season, and then let's look for long-term appointments after the season's over. Just for me. No, I think it makes sense. Like I said, Roy Keane walked away from Sunderland.
Right.
He wasn't fired because of bad results, although I don't think it was far off coming. But he said, nah, bollocks to this. I can't work with Shaw. I'm gone.
Right.
And he turned his back on the club. And for me, it's different to when a player goes, you know what, we've been relegated. I don't want to play at this level. I'm gone. Roy just quit and walked.
Yeah.
Went off walking his dog in Manchester or whatever it is he does when he's not in work.
And look, if he is appointed for the job, which it looks like it's all left but signing a contract, to be honest, I'm going to support him because I want the club to succeed and I don't want to spend another season in this league. But I will have in the back of my mind a lingering question of whether or not it was the biggest risk that we could have possibly taken at the time that we needed something sure and certain for the rest of the season.
So I will caveat that I will support whoever comes in. And look, I'm sitting in an armchair in Virginia Beach, so it's not like I'm at the crowd, unless it's Neil Warnock.
Yeah, I can get behind that. I'll get
If
behind
Neil
that.
Warnock becomes our next manager, doing these podcasts, not watching the games is going to be very difficult.
Yeah.
I've just liked him for as long as I remember.
And it's an old brand of football, and you talk about appointments that wouldn't bring excitement to the club. That would be the definition right there. As much excitement as Defoe coming back brought, appointing Neil Warnock as manager would take that amount away.
Without doubt. I mean, we might as well sell the club back to Donald and Methven in its entirety. So listen, we're only doing the podcast after the Saturday games.
Right.
So we have 2 games for you to predict.
Oh, okay.
So Tuesday we've got Cheltenham away.
All right.
What do you fancy for the score on that? And remember, as I said to you before we came on air, so for those who weren't with us before air, what I'm going to do for the rest of the season is I'm going to do a prediction, and obviously my guest is going to do a prediction, and we're going to do $5 or £5 bets on those. And then any money we were able to win from our prognostication at the end of the season, I'll donate to the Bradley Lowry Foundation.
Awesome.
So for Cheltenham, what's your prediction?
I'm going to go 2-0 to the lads. 2-0 for us. So I think, like I said, I think we'll have a manager in place, and I think it'll be the lift that we need, and maybe the start to a good run in. I still think we're going to get automatic promotion as well. So this will be the start on the march to the end here. Okay,
I'm going to be uncharacteristically optimistic. I'll go for a 3-1 Sunderland win.
All right, there it is.
I think, especially if Keane is appointed, and I think if Keane's going to be brought in, it'll be tomorrow, which will be today when the podcast comes out, because it releases on a Monday. So Keane may even be manager right now as you listen to this or watch it.
Perfect prophecy.
Yeah. And then next weekend we have Wimbledon. No, I think that's at home, or is that away?
I think it might be away.
I think it is away.
Yeah, I think we got 2 away games in a row this week.
But either way, it's a game we should be winning.
Yeah, and I think that one's the one. If we get the win on Tuesday, there's a little bit of momentum, belief back in the club, confidence. I'm going to say 3-0 at the weekend.
Okay, so it's a 3-0 win for Sunderland. I've got to say we've got to win that one. I think chances of us not being able to win these games and still having a chance at the playoffs or automatic promotion, because I still think Wigan are going to come unstuck. Rotherham, not so much. I think Rotherham are playing too well at the moment. And if their fans keep invading the pitch at penalties, then they'll do a job for the fans. I'm going to go 2-0 Sunderland. All right. I fancy us for a clean sheet. It's a long time since we've had one. So I will put $20 in total, or 20 quid in total, with our favorite British betting company. If they want to sponsor the podcast, then they can. So we have 4 results there. I'll start keeping a tally somewhere down here as to what the predictions are. Yeah, for those 2, since I'm on here with you, if we win any money, I'll match the donation to the Lowry Foundation as well. So cracking stuff. All right, so let me just touch on something, because you've mentioned the Roker Report and the Twitter. Yep. You are somewhat of a divisive character on Twitter, and you have got a lot of shit this season. How do you handle it? To me, it's, these are my opinions, and if you're going to put it out for the public, you got to believe that you're right. So if somebody comes on telling me, that I don't know what I'm talking about, or, whatever, then I just kind of brush it off and going down the road. I don't mind it. I'm not doing it on purpose. I think I've gotten a little bit of stick over the last couple of weeks. People saying that I'm giving these takes just to rise something up. And I'm not necessarily doing that. I just don't mind if my opinions do get a rise, because I believe in what I say. So, Kev, one thing I did mention: 10 years of supporting Sunderland. Obviously, you do the writing stuff for the Roker Report. Yep. You've been at the stadium a lot, right? I have not. I haven't made the trip yet. So the International Day is a goal for me at some point. May not happen this year. I'm transitioning jobs at the minute, but within the near future, the goal is to get to the Stadium of Light for International Day, especially. Well, I'll tell you what, because I do try to get home once or twice a year. If you obviously we'll not have an International Fans Day this season, right? But if you're able to make it over to the UK for International Fans Day next season, I'll be there. I'll buy you a pint. Yeah, it'd be awesome. I'd love it. Kev, thank you very much for coming on to our Stars and Stripes and Maple Syrup. Obviously, we are here in association with the guys over at SAFC NASA, the supporters branch in North America, hence the maple syrup. Otherwise, it would have just been Stars and Stripes. Next week, we have branch secretary, organization secretary John Ellington jumping in to have a chat with me.
Nice.
Kev, thank you very much for coming on.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, Gavin.
All right. Cheers, Matt.
Cheers.